Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I have my first reaction, my first dungeon playing as a Paladin in Dragonflight. This is the VOD. I'm going to be going over it a little bit, pausing things when I want to pause it, stuff like that. There's two things that are important to mention here. This is going to be mostly about feel, like how it felt. Why is that? Because one, details is currently broken in beta, so there's no way to actually check my damage and break down my damage. And number two, I'm so overgeared for these beginning dungeons. Like my Path of Ruin, if it crit, it would take like an elite to have health, right? So there's no real meaningful way to measure this. It's just I'm way too strong for it. So everything's just dying instantly, right? I don't even get to go through a full rotation. Thank goodness I didn't take execution sentence or the AoE execution sentence. It would have never even got to drop. So yeah, but I'm only gonna get my first thoughts once, and it did give me a little bit of insight, a little bit on how these talents actually work. The number one thing, so we're in a bunch of consecrations here. The number one thing was the consecration stuff, right? So one of my big takeaways with the consecration is obviously we can place down the consecration, and then the build that you're supposed to kind of take is your Art of War, Blade of Wrath, or Blade of Justice, whatever. Can call down another consecration. You can have two consecrations down. Consecration can flare up damage. Consecration can do this, can do that, does extra damage. You can cast your exorcism, and then everything in the consecration takes damage from the exorcism, and there's all kinds of consecration synergy. So the one thing that was clear to notice in this is that two things about that were very obvious. One is the consecration stuff is kind of meant to be like a sustained thing, right? At least how it's currently built, right? So consecration still doesn't do a ton of damage. They've done some tuning passes on it. It's not about the tuning though. It's just when things are dying fast, you're not going to get all those RNG consecration things building up and doing damage. On sustain, it'll be extra passive damage that you have. That you normally wouldn't have, right, in an AoE situation. Now, as far as the tuning goes, then the tuning just has to be higher than if you had more single target talents, right? So I'll go over the talents at the end a little bit. So if I had more single target talents instead of these consecration talents, the consecration talents obviously have to do more damage in AoE than the single target talents would. So if that's the case, then the tuning will be fine, and it's mostly just passive damage, right? Also, the second thing that popped up about the consecration is you do get Art of War enough that you are proccing those consecrations quite often to the point where, yes, if you want to have more than one consecration down, you would have to place one, but you sometimes, in some ways, especially again if you're going to be sustained staying in one place for a long time, you might not even have to actually cast your consecration to get like the value out of the talents. Just just getting it from the Art of War proc, and then using your Blade of Justice, and then having the free consecration drop, because it happens quite often. We know that with our tier set right now on live, that you get these procs pretty often. Art of War just procs right there on the screen, and then if you use your Blade of Justice, it'll drop your consecration right there. Now everything's dying before the consecration can do anything. But yeah, it's definitely meant for like a sustain thing. So some of the things I wonder about the testing of it is, and I don't know what people did in alpha, like how high of keys they did or whatever. And I know they didn't do any like raid testing, but for a long raid fight, or for a sustained long pull and like a high mythic plus key, the consecration damage I could see actually being meaningful. Not just the consecration damage, but the consecration damage plus the talents being meaningful over a sustained amount of time. I don't know if that's how the tuning will work out. I didn't have the numbers to actually look. It wouldn't have mattered. Again, everything's dying instantly, as you can see on the screen. Wouldn't have mattered anyways. This will have to be something that gets tested out at max level. So probably when they give us max level character templates, and then obviously have details working, and then go into the highest keys that you can do with whatever template they give us, and then testing it out from there and seeing what the damage looks like and how it breaks down there. So that was pretty cool. Another thing I noticed is Path of Ruin is quite strong. So this has been an ability I've wanted to play with a little bit. And it replaces your Wake of Ashes. This will take a lot of time. If it ends up being like the good ability to use in a lot of scenarios, it'll take some time to learn to use this properly. We've been trained with Wake of Ashes now for a couple expansions, and is it even 3? Did we get it in Legion? But we've had Wake of Ashes now for a while, and we've been trained to use it on cooldown, and it generates holy power. It's a lot weirder using it when you have holy power already. And then it's the Path of Ruin ability instead, and then like it has a shorter cooldown, but again, you have to use holy power to use it. It is very strong. It's noticeably strong. It feels good to press Path of Ruin. It feels like a strong button, and yeah, I generally think it's pretty cool. It does work with Divine Purpose, how I assumed it would. Like, I don't know why it wouldn't, right? So it does work with Divine Purpose. So you can, get free Path of Ruins as well. Indeed, Divine Purpose, the Holy Power Spender does extra damage. So some metagaming there could even be to use Path of Ruin with a Divine Purpose, unless, you don't have one proc in enough time or something like that. But using it with one, could just be super advantageous to do even more damage, right? So that ability is really cool. The nerfed Divine Toll, the not having the Ringing Clarity, that came out, is very obvious as well. It still felt good to press, like as you enter a pack and you just max out your holy power real quick. So in that way, it still feels good to press. But, on single target, like on the boss, it just feels very terrible to press, I have to say. It's not that cool to use. But yeah, that was definitely noticeable in this dungeon run as well, despite, again, it being so, with the caveats of not having a damage meter and just completely destroying everything to where it doesn't matter. I often forgot to even use my Path of Ruin. It was hard to get used to it, frankly. I mean, if I'm just being completely honest, this was my first, dungeon run using it, and it was my first time using it because I was leveling with the Wake of Ashes reset before I did a dungeon ever, and so it was my first time using it, and it was definitely awkward. I'm not gonna lie. There was no point of using Exorcism in this because, again, everything was dying too fast for it to be worth it, really. But it is another instant cast spell, which is pretty cool. It's kind of nice just to have Exorcism back in some ways. I didn't have to use any of like my defenses or anything like that. Again, it's so easy. I could have just tanked this as Ret and ran through it, so that wasn't a big issue whatsoever. Overall, though, it feels fine. The what I could say about the feeling is it feels fine. It feels very much like it does now in Season 4, except for I have more kind of cool stuff to press. Path of Ruin is different than Wake of Ashes, but you still have that. You play this with Empyrean Power, most likely, I assume. We'll talk about something about that in the talents as well. If Empyrean Power is like the dungeon talent to use, it goes through. But then, then you have like when you're on a sustained pull, using your Consecration, using your Exorcism to kind of do more sustained damage over time. Again, who knows? That'll all be about tuning, in my opinion. They need to tune that to where it's let's just go to the talents. Let's go to the talents because all this is pretty much pointless anyways. I open up my talents at the end here. Okay, so let's see. Do I have it where I'm not scrolled over something? Yeah, right here. Okay, so let's look at the talents. I'm covering up a little bit, but I don't even have these talents down here. I have the dusk and stuff covered by my camera. And then I have like a point or something into the seal that's a little bit covered by the top right of my camera, but not much. But yeah, so these are the talents I went into this dungeon with. Obviously, it's not max. I'm level 62 now, but I think I was 61. 62, just added a point into the Paladin side. So on the right side down here is Empyrean Power. If that ends up being something that we take, I have to imagine that the improved Crusader Strike might be something that you kind of need to take with it up here. So you can see I skipped it. Improved Crusader Strike gives you 2 charges of Crusader Strike. And Empyrean Power procs via your Crusader Strike, right? So only having one of those, I don't know. There's not a ton of downtime anyways, I suppose. You shouldn't be spamming your Crusader Strike. But I would be interested to know. That'd be something that, when you can start simming and everything, I would love to sim Empyrean Power with Crusader Strike improved and Empyrean Power without it, and see and then obviously without it, you get to pick a different talent. And I'd like to see like what the damage difference is there, because that was something I kind of noticed as well. Even despite all the caveats, some things were still quite noticeable. Like I said, and who knows if Final Reckoning will be good. It was obviously good for I knew it was going to be fast. I didn't know it was going to be this easy, like this overgeared. But I went with Final Reckoning with my limited talent points just because it was instant damage, instant AoE damage. I don't know if that'll end up being better than like the Executioner's thing or not. I imagine it might, but I'm sure this will have a place as well if it isn't better already. But I went with that, and yeah, these are the things I noticed very much. Path of Ruin, I hope it's usable, because if it's going to be usable, it's going to be usable, I think, in AoE, right? More than single target. So I want Path of Ruin. As far as the improved Crusader Strike, if I were going to take this improved Crusader Strike, I was trying to figure out what I'd get rid of. Now, obviously, I still have points, but I would want to put them in down here at the bottom, presumably, right? So I have 2, 4, 5, 6. So I have 4 more points, I believe, to put it in the bottom somewhere. So 2, 3, 4. So like, do you go down the Executioner's thing? Do you take the legendary power for the Divine Toll? You don't go single target, obviously, for an AoE dungeon. So you either go down here, or you start picking up other points somewhere else. One of them certainly could be improved Crusader Strike, for example, and then just maybe stats or something like that. It'd be interesting to see, again, what actually will end up simming the best. But that's kind of like my little theory, is that even though improved Crusader Strike might not seem that important because we have these extra buttons to press now, and you don't want to be spamming your Crusader Strike, it does sync with Empyrean Power. Also, it syncs with this talent over here, down here in the bottom left. This talent gives you like strength or something when you use your Crusader Strike, so that that gives you extra buff as well. So that could be another reason to take improved Crusader Strike, even though it's not like one of our known abilities that we should be pressing. Right here, this is the talent that when your Art of War procs and you use your Blade of Justice, it puts a consecration on the ground. That one actually feels really good to use. It's actually really nice not to even press your consecration, because when you have all your other buttons up, you don't really want to press your consecration. And so just getting it down for free, and then allowing like the incandescence damage to come in from that, for example, and then like on a longer pull, then I could actually use my exorcism and stuff like that. It overall felt okay. This is just a first go on this. I assume at some point Details is going to be working. The next time I do like a dungeon run and I post a video about it, I'll make sure it's like closer to 70, closer to max level, so where my gear isn't just destroying everything. And then hopefully Details is working as well on top of that. And then I'll have, actual more detailed information with like set numbers and thoughts on the numbers and the tuning and everything like that. But overall, for a dungeon run, it felt pretty good. If you like the dungeon run, if you like Mythic Plus right now for Ret, it kind of felt very similar. But then again, I wasn't like min-maxing the consecration because everything was dying. So again, I think that'll just be a tuning thing. If you do a lot of damage by consecrating, then people won't mind pressing consecration. If the damage is extremely minimal but slightly more than taking your improved judgments or something like that over here, then people probably won't like it as much. That'll probably mostly come down to tuning. Other than that, it felt mostly the same, right? It's the same kind of things. You're still, divine tolling, for example, the max your holy power. You're still getting your seraphim procs. The old Final Reckoning. If you remember playing Final Reckoning earlier in Shadowlands, you're still using Final Reckoning at the start to do extra damage to everything. It's very similar to how it plays now. I enjoy it right now, so I'm pretty optimistic about it. Honestly, I'm optimistic about the play style, and frankly, to me, it's about tuning. If Consecration does a lot of damage, I'll be pretty happy about it. And if the Consecration plus Consecration talents feel meaningless, or I have to take single target talents instead, then obviously it's stupid and it's a fail. That's just the reality. And obviously, I would not be optimistic if that was the case, and I'm banking on that not being the case. So that's it for this one. Just want to get my first thoughts out here. Finally got to play. My character's not bricked anymore. If you follow the channel, I mentioned my This Week in WoW video, my character was bricked, so I just hadn't been playing on the beta. So hopefully I can get to 70 here pretty soon. Like I said, maybe 68, 69, maybe post another dungeon run with Details working and that'll be cool to go over some of those numbers. So that's it for this one. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. Helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody have a good one.